Hi, welcome to the iThemes security installation video. Today we're going to walk step by step through installing the iThemes security plugin, configuring each aspect of it, and discussing a little bit about what each item does. So thanks for joining me. Here we go. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go log in to your WordPress site. You'll be delivered to the dashboard, and then we're going to head on over to plugins and add new. Here, we're just going to put in here iThemes security and search for it. It will show up right here. So iThemes security, formerly known as Better WP security. So let's go ahead and click install. And yep, we do want to install the plugin. So this will go ahead and download and install the plugin here in just a second. We've got our little success message, and then activate the plugin. So now what we've done is we've installed the plugin, but now we have to go set it up. So they try to be really helpful and give us these couple messages here. One, we can get brute force network protection with the free API key. We're not going to do that quite yet. What we're going to go do is secure our site. Clicking that takes us into the iThemes security dashboard. Now they go ahead and kind of walk you through the first steps to getting started. We're going to discuss each of these in turn, so I'm going to go ahead and dismiss this. Now that we have the plugin installed, the first thing you want to make sure is that you've just done a backup of your site. And this is important because every site is a little bit different. You're using a different theme, you're using different plugins. There may be unique things about your site, and as we walk through these, iThemes has done their best job to try to make sure that none of it's going to mess up anything. However, we always want to have a safety net. So personally, I use Backup Buddy. I'm going to go to Backup. I'm going to go ahead and skip the setup wizard. I'm going to choose a complete backup of the site. Look at iThemes, it's still reminding me. There it is. Okay, it's going to back up my database, backing up my files. We just are going to wait another second here for that to complete. Now you can use any backup software, any backup plugin. Just make sure that you have one. Alright, so our backup is done, and we're going to pop back over to the Security Center. So you should have an item over in your sidebar called Security. Up to Dashboard. Okay, so the first thing iThemes will tell you here is don't lock yourself out. You can be trying to prevent the bad guys from getting in and at the same time accidentally lock yourself out. So sometimes, especially when we are just configuring, we want to whitelist your IP address. So your IP address is how the internet can identify you. It's not your domain name, it's actually the address from which you're accessing the internet. You don't necessarily need to know what that is because iThemes knows that for you. Whitelisting means that no matter what, your access point is going to be allowed to get into the site. And that sometimes just keeps you from accidentally locking yourself out. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Oh look, it told me my IP address and I'm whitelisted for 1 day. This isn't something you'll usually need to do. We're going to configure iThemes security and then it pretty much just works. So we're going to go ahead and close that part. They have lots of offers of help. This is a free plugin, so obviously they want to make their money somehow. But we're working together today, so we don't need that either. All right. So here, they're also helping you sort out the high priority or most exploited items first, and then the rest. So you may have some other ones in here. There may be I think all of those are medium priority. These are primarily the highest priority. Medium priority, you might have an admin user. There might be some other things that it finds. But we are going to let it walk us through these, and then we'll walk through each of the settings. So, login area is not protected from brute force attacks. That's a big problem. Let's go fix it. So by clicking on Fix It, it takes you to the settings area. we're going to enable local brute force protection. You can enter your email address here to get further brute force protection from them. So brute force protection, let's just take a second and talk about that. What that means is that some bot has come by, found your login page, and now is trying thousands of passwords a minute to try to guess your password and log in. Obviously, having a unique username and a strong password is the first step of protecting. The second step of protecting is not let them try thousands of passwords a minute. And that is what brute force protection. Brute force is the, I'm just going to keep knocking on this door until I figure out how to knock it down. Preventing that means that you can only knock so many times before you're not allowed to knock again. So the default settings here are perfectly fine. The maximum number of login attempts per host, 5 attempts. And that means that if someone's legitimately trying their password, they also only get 5 attempts to get it right before they're logged out or locked out. So if you've got other users accessing your site, it's a good idea to let them know that you've set this, but 5 attempts is a good setting. Max login attempts per user. So they can only attempt 10 times. So that if they attempt 5 times and then they get locked out for a minute, and then after a minute they attempt another 5 times, and when they get locked out the second time, if they've used the same username all those times, then that user is going to be locked out. Again, this is just preventing bots from trying to knock too many times. You can change this. 5 minutes is a good number. You can change it down to 1 if you have people who frequently forget their passwords and try a bunch of times, so that they don't have to wait 5 minutes, but I'd leave it at 5 minutes if it was me. And admin is the default username for WordPress installs. And so many bots out there, many bad guys out there will always start by trying to use the admin username. So if you don't have admin username on your site, which you shouldn't, and if you haven't fixed that yet, don't check this box. But I would check this box because that's usually just an indicator of a bad bot. So we'll go ahead and save all changes. Great. Okay, so now you can see we'll have to go back to the dashboard to go to the next item. And you can go through this way, but because your items may be different, we're actually going to do walkthrough ourselves here. And that means we're going to go right into settings. All right. Now, iThemes security has lots and lots and lots of different settings. So if you're looking for a particular section, you can use this little shortcut to pop down to where you want to go. iThemes security, in order to do its job, wants to be allowed to write to these 2 particular files, the wp-config php and htaccess file. If you are not comfortable editing those files yourself, I would go ahead and check that. Put in notification email. So if iThemes locks people out, it will send you an email to let you know. Most of the time that's just like, hey, I'm doing my job, but also some of the time if someone legitimately locked themselves out, that will allow you to allow them back in. Digest email, I do not typically check this, but if you really want to know what's going on, you can have the digest email sent. Backup delivery email in case the first email for some reason didn't work. You can specify a particular lockout message. Again, unless you have other people accessing your site frequently, I wouldn't change these from the defaults. If you have users who are frequently locking themselves out, then you can change this to, you'll need to contact such and such. Do not put your email address in here, just your name. That would give your users something more like, oh crap, that's right, I locked myself out and now I have to go call John. Same thing here, community lockout messages. These are just 3 levels of lockout. Not really a reason to change them. Blacklisting repeat offenders. So basically if a bot comes by, tries, gets locked out, 2 days later comes by, tries, gets locked out, you don't want to keep letting them come by and and try. So blacklisting them basically means you ban their IP, so they can't even access the site. The threshold for basically not allowing them to get to the site is 3 lockouts. The period is 7 days. The lockout period is 15 minutes. All of these are just fine for defaults. Now, if you want to whitelist someone's IP address so that they're never locked out, like that's giving this person a free pass. You can try as many times as you want. I know that you are the right person, so I'm not going to lock you out. You can add their IP address here. So you could add your own current IP address to the whitelist. iThemes makes that really easy for you to do, to just pop that in there. I don't necessarily do this myself because I don't lock myself out, but if you tend to lock yourself out, or if you have other users that do, adding their IPs here would be a good idea. iThemes gives you a little bit of guidance here about how to do that. Unless you're a very advanced user or you have a specific set of IPs, you probably don't want to be using any of this advanced stuff. Just get the individual IP addresses and put them in there. Email lockout notifications. So this you might turn on to begin with, but maybe eventually, especially if it's just you accessing your site, you won't need it. This will basically send you an email every time there's a lockout. And you will be surprised at how many lockouts happen and how many bots are coming by and trying to get into your site. Now, don't freak out when you get the email, because it's just iThemes telling you, hey, I did my job. It's also iThemes giving you the opportunity to unlock out that person if it was an actual person that forgot their password and tried too many times. So I suggest leaving that on to start with, but then if you're getting a ton of these and you're like, yes, thanks iThemes, I know you're doing your job, you can come back into email lockout notifications and uncheck the box. Log type database. So this is just where iThemes is logging events, days to keep the database logged. Again, these things, unless you have a very heavy use site, unless you are really going to dig into your security logs, these default settings are perfectly fine. This is where you would find your log files if you ever needed those, which I doubt you will, but there's the location. iThemes tries to improve their product by tracking plugin usage, and so that when they test updates to their plugin, they know what other plugins to test it against, because there can be many variations. So if you want to share your information with them, they won't know it's you. You can check the box. Especially for free plugins, I think it's good practice to try to give back as much as possible to the developer who's spending their time trying to give you valuable software to use. File locking. I don't think that this is really necessary, so I just leave it off. File locking is not something you're going to need to know a lot about. Overriding proxy detection. If you're using Cloudflare or Varnish or another service that might be providing you performance or security enhancements, you can turn this on and get more accurate IP detection. So that means that when traffic is being routed through Cloudflare or Varnish, iThemes might not always know what IP address is coming from accurately, and so if you check this box, iThemes may have a more accurate idea of the IP address and thus do a better job of locking things out. I use Cloudflare and I typically do not check this box, so you can just leave it off unless you know for sure you are using Varnish and Cloudflare and you want to check it. I think leaving it off is just fine. Security menu and admin bar. So you'll see up here at the admin bar, there's a security item. You can hide that if you want to. Check this box if you want to. So at this point, I save all changes. Now it is going to pop me back to the top, but don't worry. We're going to just go to choose a section, and we're going to go down to 404 detection and continue. All right, so 404 pages. You may have heard about this. These are pages that do not exist on your site. And some of the ways that the bad guys try to get in is trying all kinds of pages that might exist on your site or typically exist on WordPress sites. And when they're doing that, they're just firing off a ton of hits to your site. And that's usually an indication that somebody's doing nefarious activities that could result in a breach to your site. So you can enable 404 detection, which means that if somebody is hitting too many pages that don't exist, that it's going to lock them out. I think it's a good idea to turn this on. Again, these default settings are perfectly fine. Basically, there's some places on your site that you want to not block if things hit. So that's what the whitelist is all about. If there are images that are missing, that's not a big deal. So we're going to ignore 404 errors for image types, which is also good practice. So basically check the enable 404 detection. Know that that locks out people who are trying to hit too many pages on your site that don't exist. And that protects your site. So we're going to wait to save all changes for a couple more sections. Away mode. I personally don't use away mode. It is another level of security. If you know that you are never going to edit your site in the middle of the night, then you can enable away mode and basically only allow access to your site during the hours in which you think you're going to be updating your site. If your site is, for whatever reason, a big target, this is another layer of protection. I personally am not currently using it, but if things ever escalated, if I started being the target of attack, I probably would use away mode to basically hide or lock out the login page for admins during hours that I'm not going to be actually logging in to edit my site. So that's what away mode does. Banned users. So if you have a list of people or people being IP addresses that you know are bad and you don't even want accessing your site, you can put that in here. I always do enable hackerrepair.com blacklist feature. So this hackerrepair.com is a website that keeps track of the IP addresses of known bad guys. And so doing that, just make sure that known bad guys never even get access to your site. Enable ban users. If you have, again, specific IP addresses that you want to ban, you would check this box and add the IP addresses here. Again, I don't personally use that. I just enable the hackerrepair.com blacklist feature, and that is good. Okay, so we already set up this brute force protection. I had put in my email address and it gave me an API key. So that one's all good to go. We already talked about that section. File change detection. So this is another indicator that things are not going as planned on your site. If files are changing and you didn't actually log in to change them. iThemes recommends doing this because I have backups that run nightly. If I do enable this, so if I check enable file change detection, that's going to send me an email anytime any file changes on my site, which is helpful but can also be a little overwhelming. If you do this, I seriously suggest making sure that you know where your backups are kept and exclude that folder from being monitored, because otherwise, if you're like me and you have nightly backups, you're going to get an email every single day. There are some ignored file types. So again, these are typically non-threatening files that if they get updated or they are frequently updated, that's great. You can turn off the emailing of the notifications. The notifications will then just show up in your admin. And you can also turn that off if you want to. So you can have iThemes tracking this without telling you anything, or you can have it email you and tell you in the admin. If you're curious, if you think that your site is a target, this is an extra layer that you can turn on. I do not turn this on for all of my sites. A lot of times they are being edited daily, so I don't necessarily want file change detection. If you are not frequently editing your site, this might be something good to turn on. I would have the email change notifications at least to start, so that you get an idea of how frequently things are being changed, or if things are being changed when you're not in there. Eventually you may want to turn the email file change off and then just display the file change admin warning. So when you log in, you'll get a little note if things have changed. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck this, but you can check it. Make sure to exclude any folder where things are being updated automatically nightly, like backups. And then choose how you want to be notified down here. But I'm just going to go ahead and uncheck this because it's an extra layer that I don't need at this time. Hiding the login area. So typically, every WordPress installation has the same login URL. This is actually the most effective thing that I did on one of my sites to stop getting brute force attacked, is that I check this button, enable the hide backend feature. You change where you go to log in. So that means that instead of going to /wp-admin, you will go to / whatever's in here. And it cannot be login admin dashboard or WP login WP login.php, because those are already being used by WordPress, so you have to choose something different. And whatever you choose, make sure that you write that down, put it somewhere, because the next time you go to log into your website, I guarantee that you will still go to /wp-admin, and it will tell you that page can't be found, and you're going to freak out. So if you use this feature, which is a great feature, which will reduce the number of drive-by brute force attacks that happen because they won't know what page on your site is your login page, just be sure to note this login URL. You need to know what this is so that you can log into your website next time. If you're using a password manager, which I certainly hope that you are, you need to save, when you're done here, go to a new browser, put in that URL, go log in there so your password manager saves that. So put in whatever you want here. Make it something that's easy for you to remember. It is kind of a bummer that login, admin, and dashboard are all taken because those are easy to remember, but you can use like a combination, like admin login or dashboard login. That will work too. Leave this box checked. A lot of themes try to do some thinking for you, so this iThemes helps them know what page is now your login page since you changed it. This is all good for default, so you don't need to do that. This one you're not going to need to worry about. If you needed a custom action to handle a logout function, if you do have members for your site, if people besides yourself are logging in, be very careful with this. You may not want to use this if you have a membership site, because unless you have a specific page for members to log in. But if you're using default stuff, don't change the login page on your members. If you don't have a membership site, great, use this. If you have a membership site but members have their own login page, great, use this. Just know that by using this, you are actually changing the login page for your site. And if you forget what it is, you're not going to be able to log into your website. I'm going to make that something I'm going to remember. Okay, moving on, malware scanning. So this is a great feature. It does require you to go to this other website to get an API key. So let's go do that real quick here. They have a little tutorial. Basically, we have to go to another website and sign up for an account, and then we can grab the API key. If you do not want to do this, so basically you are signing up for an account and providing your email address to VirusTotal. I've done this. I have not received any spam or anything from VirusTotal. This was all a very legit process when I did it. No need to worry there. It is an extra step. It's because they're using VirusTotal's engine to do the malware scanning. iThemes Security doesn't have its own malware scanner, so they're going to go use VirusTotal's to do that. So quickly, let's walk through this. We're going to go visit VirusTotal. I'm going to leave this page open and open this guy in a new window. So we'll pop over to there. Here we are. And we need to, so we're just going to pop back to the instructions here. It tells us, join our community. Okay, here we go, join our community. We're going to fill out our information. You guys can go ahead and do that. And then when you're done, click sign up. I'm already a member, so I'm going to go ahead and just sign in. So once you've filled out that form, then you should come to a page like this. You may have to log in. Then you'll come to a page like this, and up here with your profile, click that, and then go grab my API key. Click on that. It's going to give you a number. You're going to copy it, and then you're going to go back to your dashboard and paste in that API key. So that's it. We just went to VirusTotal, we created an account, and then we went, I'm going to pop over to VirusTotal again, we went up to your username up here, to my API key, which brought us to this page, and then we just copied it, and we pasted it over in the settings for iThemes. So that's all you have to do to enable malware scanning. And malware scanning basically means at a set interval, your site will be looked at to make sure that there is no bad code on it. Nobody's injected anything nefarious. So this is, again, a very nice feature. It does take one extra step, but it's pretty easy. All right, SSL. I hope that most of you are familiar or have at least heard the term SSL, Secure Socket Layers. That is the encrypting of the data sent between your server and the website. Basically, you can think of it like putting the information that you're submitting in a little bubble as it goes to the server. A lot of people don't realize that when you are communicating with websites, if they don't have SSL, that communication can be intercepted by anybody else and used. So email, for example, is not secure. It does not use SSL. When you are shopping online, you want to make sure that there's that cute little green lock icon up in the address bar. That indicates SSL. That indicates that your information is being protected as it's going between the server and the website. So here it is telling me my site does not currently have an SSL certificate. So we don't want to use any of these features. Now, if you have a site that has e-commerce, you are likely going to have an SSL certificate, and you could be using these features. Forcing SSL for login, that means that when people log in, it is going to be over SSL, which makes it more secure. You can force SSL for dashboard, which means that when you're in your dashboard, all of that communication between your dashboard and the server is going to be secured. And you can turn that on for the public parts of your site. Again, if you don't have SSL on your site, none of this applies, so you can just skip on past. Strong passwords. So by default, WordPress does not enforce strong passwords. A lot of us don't like to have to use strong passwords because they're hard to remember, they're long, they're a pain in the butt. Another reason that you should be using a password manager. Password managers will go ahead and create passwords, strong passwords for you. I recommend checking this box. because it will force people to use strong passwords, which improves the security of your website. One of those people is probably you. Force yourself to use a strong password. You can select the role. So if you again have a member site, I don't think it's a bad idea to force your members to have strong passwords. However, it is kind of a pain for them. So if you are less concerned about your membership content falling into non-member hands, but you are very concerned about the various people making bad changes to your site, you can set this role to administrator, which means only administrators will be required to have strong passwords. If you've got a team of people who are contributing to your site, you might make the minimum role contributor, which means that everybody above contributor has to have a strong password. If you do have multiple people working on your site in different roles, I suggest enforcing strong passwords for all of them. I think that enforcing them for subscribers or members of your site is also a good idea, but absolutely contributor and above. All right, phew, here we go. Now we're on to system tweaks. These are truly advanced items that most users won't need to come in and deal with. But we're going to quickly kind of walk through them in the case that you're a one-off and one of these makes sense for you. So you can choose to protect your system files. So there are certain files that give information about your website. System files. If we check protect system files, then those files are then protected, but also nobody can write to them. Directory browsing prevents users from seeing a list of files. This is not usually a big problem with WordPress, but it's a good thing to check. Request methods. I'd be careful with this one if you've got other people interfacing with your site. It's a good thing to check, but it does have legitimate uses. So if you have bloggers auto-publishing to your site and things like that, be careful with this one. Suspicious query strings. If you are not using query strings, I would go ahead and check that. Non-English characters. If you are an English-only site, then you can go ahead and check this. And it only works with filters to suspicious query strings. Limited number of characters in a URL. This one, again, be careful with if you are using post titles in your URLs and some of your URLs get really long. This potentially could be a problem. Usually it's not. I go ahead and use it. File writing permissions. This one can cause some issues with other plugins and things that are trying to write. I won't always use this one. And then disable PHP and uploads. This is a good thing to enable. All right, so then we're on to WordPress tweaks. Woofda. So remove WordPress. So this is back to revealing information about your site. You probably don't want to tell the world that you're using WordPress. They might guess, but we won't have to tell them. So we're going to go ahead and check that box. I don't know of anybody that's currently using Windows Live Writer. If you are, then you can evaluate using this. It's a blogging client. Otherwise, move on over. So if you're using external services that rely on XML RPC, then you can go ahead and remove this. I typically do. Reducing comment spam. I personally use Akismet for this, but I'm always all about making sure that I'm not going to get comment spam, so I check that. WordPress version. So this is back to displaying what WordPress version you're using, because I'm always updated. I don't feel like I need to display random versions, but this is something that you can check if you want to disguise what version of WordPress you're using. Disable the file editor. Again, this is probably one of those secondary layers that isn't necessary for everyone. I don't usually use this. Disabling XML RPC. So if you have external services that are integrating with your site, you may not want to turn this off, or you may not want to change this. Right now, it's functioning as normal, which means iThemes doing anything is off. You can disable trackbacks and pingbacks, or you can completely disable this. Be aware, if you are using XML RPC, you won't want to do anything here. XML RPC is one of those functions of WordPress that from time to time is exploited. If you are more on the paranoid side, I would go ahead and go completely disable, as long as you are completely positive that you're not using this functionality. If you just want to be safe, I'd say only disable trackbacks, pingbacks. This is about jQuery. Usually this isn't necessary. Typically between your host and WordPress, your version of jQuery is an updated version, so I wouldn't mess with this. You can disable login error messages, which, again, if you're the only person logging into this site and you don't want to give bad people clues about what they're doing wrong, you can disable this. I don't think usually it's necessary, so I don't check it. Forcing unique nicknames, which means that every user that comes along has to have a unique nickname. I think WordPress may even do this by default, but it's a good idea. Disable extra user archives, which means that if a user for your site has never created any posts, then automatically when a user is created on your site, WordPress assumes that they're going to be creating posts and creates an archive page for them. If those users never create any posts, those archive pages don't need to exist, and so I usually check this box, which means if users haven't created any posts, then they don't have an archive page. So, and there we are. We're at the end here. Let's save all of our changes. Okay, so remember, I changed my URL for login, and the page is reminding me. Remember, next time you log in, this is where you're going to have to go. I'm going to click OK. All right. The good news is we've just worked our way through all of the settings, all of the regular settings. Now we've got one more tab to tackle, and that's advanced. So let's go click there. Alrighty. Again, iThemes is all about warning you that you need to have a backup. It's always a good idea before you start changing things, especially security related things. Admin user. So this is one of the most exploited default settings in WordPress. When you do your installation of WordPress, the first user it creates has a user ID in the database of 1 and has the name admin, unless you changed it. When bad guys are trying to break into your site, if you have an admin user, they know that's the default. That's the first thing they're going to try. They're already halfway there to breaking into your site. All they need now is the password. If you have a different named user, one that's harder to guess, then they're not already 50% of the way there into breaking into your site when they get to your page. So that's why it's important not to use admin as your username. If you have admin as your username, you can't just go over to your user settings over here and change that. Once a username is created, it's created. However, iThemes can go into the database and change that name. So if you have admin as a user, that will show up here. It will tell you back up your database, but then you can change it. I currently have an ID of user 1 here, so I need to change the admin user, and I need to change the ID. I have a database backup already, so I'm pretty confident in doing this. But these are important things, but it also is iThemes going directly to the database to change things. So that's why there's all this like warning around it. You absolutely should do these things. If you have admin as your username, or if you have a user with an ID of 1, you should change those things. It will make your site more secure. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save Admin User. It logged me out because it changed my user ID. So I'm going to go ahead and log back in here and pop back over to our advanced settings. That's where we were at. All right, so when I do not have a user named admin and I have no user with the ID of 1 in my database, then this is what iThemes looks like. We're all good to go. Excellent. Moving on. WordPress salts. So this is advanced. Again, unless you think that you are definitely being a target of someone trying to get into your site, not just the regular amount of site hacking attempts that happen to every site on the internet, but if there's something specific that you're worried about, then you might consider changing the WordPress salts. I don't typically use this. It is a nice feature to have, but it's definitely more advanced. I'd say it's one of those second layer of security. Changing the content directory. Again, if bad guys are trying to inject bad things into your site, the less they know, the better. Every WordPress site has a WP content directory. This can break things. So unless this is a totally fresh installation and iThemes security is the first thing you're ever doing with your site, I do not recommend changing the content directory. So if you already have an existing site and you're installing iThemes, leave this alone. If you build a brand new site, or if this is a brand new site, then I would say, great, you can change that content directory and be a little bit more protected, but otherwise don't mess with this one. Changing the database prefix. Again, this is one of those, the less bad guys know about your site, the better. Every default installation that happens with WordPress uses WP as your database prefix. And that's just stuff you'll never see as a person who's not in the code, but it is one more clue about your site and how it's working. My current database prefix, table prefix, is not WP, so I don't need to change that. If it is WP, make sure you've got a backup. I do highly recommend changing that table prefix. All you do is you're going to check this box, and then you hit Change Database Prefix, and it will generate a random one for you. This should not break anything. Should is the key word. Again, iThemes tests with many plugins and many themes, and they try to make sure that their software is rock solid. But because WordPress is such an open platform and you can do anything with it, they can't know 100% of the time if things are going to break. So that's why you always have a backup. But if this right here says that your database table prefix is WP, you should check this box and hit Change Database Prefix. Okay, that concludes all of the settings in iThemes. So we're just going to scroll back to the top and pop back to the dashboard. Now, you should have secured all high priority items. If we walk through all those things and there's still a high priority item here, go ahead and click the blue Fix button and go chase that down. iThemes will walk you through it. It's one of the things we discussed. You can just back the video up and re-listen to that part. Medium priority. So iThemes considers having my WordPress dashboard available all the time to be a medium priority. I do not. I didn't fix it. If you wanted to, you can go fix it. I have Backup Buddy. I've not set scheduled backups here. iThemes is the maker of Backup Buddy, so that's why iThemes Security and Backup Buddy are so integrated, and that's why it knows that. On my standard sites, I would have those scheduled. And I'm not looking for changed files. Again, that's something we discussed, and I don't always do. And iThemes considers that medium priority. Now there's a whole bunch of low priority things of items that I decided not to use. Again, these are all items that we talked about. You can walk through the video again decide whether or not you want to go ahead and change them. And then it does have our little checklist of all the things that we did do. Yay! Okay, so that is it. That completes our walkthrough of the iThemes security. So thanks for sticking with me through all of those settings. I am so glad that you're able to walk through those, and we've now secured your site against bad guys, making sure that you are more protected. Make sure that you are using a secure password. That is the #1 thing besides all the other things that we did. If you do need additional layers of security, feel free to watch the video again and go ahead and apply some of those additional layers of security. iThemes has lots and lots of options. So you could really, really lock down your site, but taking those precautions and making sure that you are updating your site along with having iThemes will keep your site secure. So thanks for watching.